your weekly horoscope with Jerry and Matt.
All right, welcome, horror fans. Welcome to another edition of the Weekly Horoscope. I'm your host, Jerry, here with my partner, Matt. And this week for you, we chose an interesting topic. We're going to talk about pathogen problems and what that translates to. And it's pretty timely, really, if you look at the last few years and the world has gone through the COVID pandemic, and movies about infections and viruses spreading out of our control have always been interesting. But I think with all of our lives being impacted in the last few years by what we've experienced, I think they're even more timely and really gives a sense of realism to some of these things that we would have thought were just fantasy and fiction in the past.
Yeah, it's interesting to go back and look at some of these movies where you thought a lot of stuff would have been blown out of proportion or fake, or people's just reactions in general of just panic. And you look at a lot of those old films and you say, oh, wow, some of the stuff was actually, they were kind of right on the ball with it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And this is a pretty broad category. Movies like Virus, and you could probably lump any zombie movie into this category. But the movies we picked this week are I think are two outstanding movies and really hit the topic right on the head.
Yeah, I love the topic of pathogens because as society continues to grow in complexity and structure and population size, we really started to realize this in COVID. We realize how fragile society actually is, and how when human nature is threatened with microscopic threats to ourselves, and when we become threats to everyone around us as well, where we can become the host of something, it really you can see that the horror and humanity come out. But you can also see like a lot of the courage develop in a lot of people, which we see in some of these movies too.
Yeah, absolutely. It shows the best and the worst of all of us. I agree with that. Our first movie that we're going to talk about is what I consider an underrated gem. It's not talked about a lot, and I really think it's an outstanding movie. 2010, The Crazies, directed by Breck. And this was on our list of best remakes. And, again, it goes back to it's a George Romero concept. And you think about the overall concept of mistrust of the government and underhanded tactics by the military. And you think about when Romero put this together, we're right in the thrush of the Vietnam conflict and all the distrust that was sown across America from different factions there. And it's funny because it was so timely then and is updated to be so timely now.
Yeah, that's one thing I noticed in watching this movie. Over and over and over again, I've seen this movie several times. It's a zombie flick, but at its heart, you start to feel like the military is the bigger threat than the zombies themselves. And so that kind of gives it that like tyranny of the government feel to it, like this looming effect that there's a greater evil than you're aware of in the movie than just the zombies.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I always like the distrust and the you don't really know where to get direction from when the world falls apart. You look to your government, you look to your leaders, and when they're the problem, where do you look? And that's kind of the dual dilemma that this film throws at you.
Yeah, and it does it well. There's some great acting.
Yeah, absolutely. We start in Ogden Marsh, Iowa. It's a small rural farm town. Very Mayberry-ish, very old school, kind of gives you that homey place you'd love to grow up and raise your kids kind of feel.
Everyone knows each other, everyone knows the nurse's boyfriend and Scotty, and like everyone's just, it's a very small town.
Yeah. We start on the opening day of baseball season, and the whole town is there for high school baseball, which is kind of a cool vibe.
Yeah.
And in the middle of the ball game, a man named Rory walks from the outfield just into the middle of the game carrying a shotgun. And he's also carrying a blank stare that he's got this off look about him. And the sheriff, our main character, David Dutton, he confronts him and he assumes Rory is drunk and he's trying to get him to put down the shotgun. And instead he blankly raises the shotgun into the firing position and David is forced to shoot him. So it starts off with a bang. It's like, holy cow!
Yeah, it's a great opening scene.
Yeah, it takes this idyllic town and just throws this
and just
disaster.
throws this chaos right into it. I think it's done really well. Like even the way he approaches him, a cop would never. I mean, he would have had his gun out, right? But like it's a small town. He's like, "Hey, Rory, what's going on, man? You're drunk. Like put the gun down, man. We're having a ball game here." Like like everyone knows each other, kind of thing. And it's kind of like you said, very homely. And then it just the movie starts to fire off.
It's almost he almost approaches it like legitimate disbelief that this could happen in my town.
Yeah.
At the medical examiner, he's confronted by the angry family who, blame him for overreacting, saying, you just thought it was the town drunk. And the wife says, Rory hasn't drank in 2 years. And, of course, I don't know what he was supposed to do, whether the guy was drinking or not, but he assumed the man was just drunk.
Right.
And we find out that then he gets a call a little while later from the medical examiner saying the blood alcohol level was 0.0.
Yeah.
Which has a bit of an effect on him because now he really doesn't know what happened.
Yeah, and this is part of the really good character development in this movie, where he's kind of like he's saddened by what's going on. He ends up going back to the field to try to like figure out what's going on in his head. He's like kind of looking for peace, like what is going on.
Yeah. And it's the lead character is played by Timothy Olyphant, and if you look at this movie and the show Justified, and I've heard his name thrown about to be Roland in the Dark Tower, in the Mike Flanagan saga. If these are his audition tapes for that role, I'm all in because he's outstanding.
Yeah, I am too. I've liked him in a lot of the stuff he's done.
David's wife is Judy. She's the town doctor. And a family comes in because the dad, Bill, is just not himself. He's staring off blankly into space, a look very reminiscent of Rory in the outfield. And he repeats himself. He seems like he's just completely out there. And she sends him home for rest. And that night, in another fantastic scene, the mother comes to, and a giant combine is running out in the garage, and it's beautifully shot where there's lights on the combine in the dark barn, and the shredder is just turning, and it looks so imposing and intimidating. This normal piece of farm equipment that they use every day. It's just a creepy scene.
Yeah, it gave me like a UFO invading your house kind of vibe. Like it's like the lights coming down and you couldn't really see what it was or who was there, who was operating it.
Yeah, very just unsettling, and but she can't find Bill, the wife, and she hears screaming in the house, and she runs back into the house, and Bill has a knife and is chasing the son, and they end up hiding in a closet, the mother and son do, and he traps them in the closet. He locks them in and pours gas on the door and down the stairs and out the front porch and just ignites his house, burning his family alive. And just
it was jaw-dropping. I was like, you could hear them screaming in the house trying to get out, and like he's just like whatever and just does it like with no emotion.
And in a what I thought was just this is already like a real hammer shot of what this guy just did to his family, to throw almost a crazy twist to it. When the cops show up, he's mowing his lawn with the house burning in the background with the blank stare on his face that David instantly recognizes.
Yeah, and they finally like sit him down and he just starts whistling. Like he just doesn't care. He's whistling Dixie,
Yeah, completely shot. And we cut to a group of hunters kind of walking through with waders through a swamp, and they come across, they find a military man dead in the swamp, and it looks like he's got a parachute on, but it's open behind him, but he's dead.
Yeah.
And when David investigates, they start looking around. They end up finding an aircraft had crashed into the river a few days prior
Yeah,
It was
they
just,
got a lead. They got a lead from Travis, the local, and they ignored it a week ago because Travis is kind of crazy, and they're just like, I didn't think anything of it. It's Travis, you know. And they're like, but
yeah,
now it kind of makes sense. So they grab Travis and they get him on the boat and like bring us to where you heard this noise, and they go out there and there it is under the water, this huge boat.
yeah.
I mean,
And it's
this
another
huge
cool
plane.
shot where you can see it superimposed underneath their little boat,
Yeah,
and the shadows showing through the river.
yeah, another one of those great drone shots that I love.
Yeah.
Yeah.
David goes back into town and goes to the town engineer, and they track the water source, and the water comes from that river and trickles its way through the system into the town. And when they start tracking it, the first house that the water comes to is Rory's.
Yep.
And at this point, David knows something's wrong.
Yeah, yeah, it's that light bulb moment that he has.
He tries to get the mayor to shut off the water, but in almost like the mayor of Amityville and Jaws,
Yeah.
he's just oblivious to the concerns and say, this is a farming town. We shut off the water, the crops will die, the town will be bankrupt.
And ironically, in a good allegory, like he's in his pool in the water, like just dousing himself in the water, like you got nothing to worry about.
Completely relaxing, and yeah.
Yeah.
At this point, all phones, internet, and cells are completely out, and they cannot contact the outside world. And there's a military government presence causing this to happen.
He goes outside and he sees the woman on a bike, just kind of like singing, and like it's 1950, and she's just on a bike singing, going through town all by herself, and this a camera starts like flashing pictures at David. And then all of a sudden you see this black Suburban just like take off, and he gets his attention. And that's when he really starts to know there's some kind of military thing going on.
Cool note. The woman on the bike was one of the main characters from Romero's 1973 original. That was a little cameo.
I've never seen that movie, but I need to go back and watch it.
It's kind of like we talked about in why Romero's movies always translate so well to remakes. He was always working with small budgets, and you can kind of see it reflected there. But the core idea, he really seeds it. And this movie, he's an executive producer on this movie, and this movie is just really all his idea with a better Hollywood budget, better effects, better actors, etc. But
I feel like if you just went back in time and give Romero all the money he needed, he would have just like blown Hollywood out of the water.
Yeah,
like with all the ideas that he's had.
Yeah, he made so many classics without the money. It's like
right.
Who knows what he would have done?
Right. Yeah.
David goes into the funeral home and he gets attacked by the medical examiner with a bone saw, and that's a pretty cool scene. It's a pretty creepy scene, but he manages to pull the cord tight and strangle the guy and actually end up pulling the saw into himself.
Yeah.
But when the man dies, the saw hits the ground and the blade turning, it's buzzing along, and it's almost like a vehicle running at him now. And it's the saw is headed right for David, who has nowhere to go. And his deputy, Russ, his deputy and good friend, comes in just in time and unplugs it.
Yeah, you see it stop, and then he's wondering why it stopped, and then the camera just kind of slides across, and you see the foot on Russell's foot is right there on the wire.
Yeah,
and he saves him.
Yeah, it's like the mad dog that ran out of leash, just before he got to the person.
Yeah. I thought that was a cool scene because I was worried they were going to do the slip and slide and the blood type thing because there was blood on the ground when they're fighting. I was like, oh, he's just going to slip. But then when he kind of corralled him with the cord and kind of tripped him up, I thought that was really clever.
One of the best things about this movie, other than I think there's 6 or 7 what I think to be fantastic set pieces that are really well done, well acted, creepy. But the movie's smart. The characters do what you think characters would do. There's no dumb decisions that lead people down a wrong path. It's very smart acted horror movie, I thought.
Yeah, I agree. It's very grounded with their decision making.
The military has now officially arrived, and they are grabbing everyone, and they're bringing everybody into a fenced area around the school. And what they're doing is they're scanning you on the way in. Again, This is 2010. Think about places where you'd have your temperature taken to get in during COVID.
Yes.
And you know, they're scanning people. Anybody with an elevated fever gets pulled off to the side.
Yeah. And when you watch the movie back then, it was just kind of like, what kind of sci-fi Star Trek stuff is this? You know, oh, you're just going to get beeped real quick and taken to a side. And it's like, well,
yeah. And lo and behold, we lived it.
Yep.
Here's where we find out that Judy, David's wife and the town doctor, is pregnant and thus has an elevated temperature, and she's pulled away. And all the military have the masks on. If you look at the movie poster from Romero's original, it's basically that haunting infection mask is the premise, which is really cool.
That mask to me is like the modern, like that medieval crow mask they had from the Black Death, the Black Plague, when doctors would wear that long mask, and it's now become like synonymous with like steampunk stuff. Like now when I see that modern oxygen mask, it kind of reminds me like the modern version of that.
Yeah. So that they got masks on.
Yeah.
The doctors are bringing all the quote sick people into one area, and they're strapping them to gurneys and kind of evaluating them as they go. And they shuttle all the non-sick people to a truck stop on the outskirts of town where they're going to be taken out of the area, allegedly. And there's this cool scene where they're walking, and David it says, one of the guys from town is saying, well, yeah, you know, they're going to send us somewhere and we'll be safe. And David says, well, I'm going back for my wife. And he's like, well, why? And he's like, do me a favor. Don't ask me why I can't leave without my wife. And I won't ask you why you can.
Why you can. Yeah.
And it was just perfect.
Yeah, I loved that. Was a little fist pump moment. I was like, yeah.
Yeah. He's a good character through the whole thing. He's level-headed and everything you would expect him to be.
Yeah, he's good at discerning what's going on. He's trying as hard as he can to discern without losing his character.
Back at the gated area around the school, locals storm the area and they run down the fence in a big pickup truck, and they start shooting. So there's this big gunfight with the military and the locals, and with the fence knocked down, infected start to attack, and the military bails. The doctor, they just leave.
Yeah.
And the sick people, some of whom are infected and some of whom are suffering from this, but some are not.
And one thing I didn't know, I walked away from this movie asking myself, was that truckload of people, were they like rebelling against the government saying you can't do this, or were they just crazies? They never say. They never say.
They never really say.
It leaves you to think about it. Yeah.
We do see some craziness start to happen as things deteriorate. So I guess it leaves it open for
interpretation.
Yeah.
It's chaos either way.
And in another fantastic scene, and this is what you see on the cover of most of the DVD and Blu-ray and the movie poster for the 2010 release, the school principal comes walking into the sick area and he's just dragging a pitchfork, and it's just squealing along the concrete floor, and it's you can see it's already got blood on it, and it's making a trail as he drags it. And anyone that's still alive on their gurneys, he's taking the pitchfork and just impaling it through the middle of their bodies. And you see these really cool shots where the pitchfork goes through and you see it come through the bottom, and then just the streams of blood drip direct off the tongs of the fork. It's just really well done.
I thought it was one of the most intense scenes of the movie.
Yeah, he's moving slowly.
Yep.
He's going, oh, this person's awake. Boom.
And they're aware of it. Like, they're looking up like, no, don't. And Judy is strapped down and she's watching from the other side of the room as he's making his way. And she's freaking out. So you almost feel like you're seeing it through her lens, like being strapped down and this guy's moving close to you. Yes.
There's basically 4 awake and alive people on the gurneys, and he impales the first 2. And he's about to get to Becca, who happens to be Judy's assistant. Mm-hmm. And Judy screams. And she's yelling at him and takes his attention away from Becca saving her. And he comes over, and now we know Judy's pregnant, and he's about to impale her right through the stomach. And David and Russ arrive, and David shoots him dead. So it gets him just in time.
Mm-hmm.
So now we got David, his wife Judy, Deputy Russ, and Becca, and they're going to try to make it to the truck stop where David believes healthy people are being shuttled out of town. As they get into town, all the cars are booted, and they encounter another truck of people who are just running around with guns.
It seems like outlaws have ravished the town or something. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think this is the same group of hunters that found the body, because they just love to hunt, and they're shooting every person they see, infected or otherwise, and they're dragging them into the back of their pickup.
And it makes you wonder if they're infected too. Like the infection just makes you do that, just makes you crazy. It's kind of hard to differentiate.
Yeah, they're as crazy as the crazies.
Right.
So they decide they can't. There's no cars in town because they're all booted. They want to get away from these people, so they cut through farmland, and they get to the farm that's owned by Becca's boyfriend Scotty, his parents' farm. And they meet Scotty, and they're in the barn, and as they're kind of like hiding out, the military sweeps through the area and brings Scotty's parents out of the house. So Scotty, of course, runs out of the barn to say, "Hey, what's going on with my parents? What are you doing?" And they shoot him. A non-infected, regular, healthy human. They shoot him, and then they shoot the parents, and burn the whole lot of them.
Yeah. Yeah. Panic has ensued, and no one trusts anyone.
So now our group is hiding in the barn and knowing the military is not here to help us.
Yeah.
This is a contamination containment protocol, and we're done if they find us.
Yeah. And it goes right back to what I was saying in the beginning about how you start to feel like the military is the bigger evil here.
Yeah. Yeah. And they hide in the back of the barn, and a military guy comes in, and they catch him. They hit him from behind, and they
he has his
him.
gun. He's got his gun out, and they kind of get him. Yeah.
And he's a young kid. And they talk to him. He's like, "I'm the sheriff. Look, we're fine." He convinces them not to give up their location to the others.
Yeah, the military guy's like, "Listen, I didn't sign up to kill innocent people. Like, I wasn't here. I just signed up to be in the military. Like, I didn't know this was the operation." You're like, "Listen, my wife's the doctor. Like, I'm the sheriff. We're trying to do the right thing. If we let you go, you're not going to blab, right?" And he's like, "I'm not going to blab." And so there's a little bit of faith that they kind of create between them.
Yeah, and as David points out, David and Russ kind of disagree. Russ just wants to kill him. David says, "Well, if we kill him, we're for sure going to get caught. Our only chance is to trust him."
Right.
And this is where Russ starts to show aggressive signs. And the indication is that, Russ has been a great guy and a great friend and a great deputy. And you really get the vibe that he might not be okay.
Yeah, his arc starts to begin.
Yeah. And he was a great character.
He was throughout the whole movie, even to the very end. I actually liked his what they did with his character. I thought it was well written.
Absolutely. It becomes daylight, and they finally make it to David and Judy's house, where they got an older car in the barn up on blocks that they can throw some wheels on and think they have transportation. His cop car is just burnt to a crisp. And home, thinking that who knows when they're going to go home again, if ever, Judy goes up into her nursery almost to say goodbye, and there she gets caught and trapped by Rory's infected wife and son, and they're completely mad now, just like Rory was.
Yeah, and it's kind of like a playback to the very beginning when they confronted David in the funeral home, and they were like, he had been sober for 2 years. How could you do this?
Yes.
What were you trying to do? And David's like, "I don't know what happened. Like he had a gun, They have this real confrontation there. And now it's kind of coming back where now they're there with guns to get revenge.
And what I think kind of separates this movie from quote unquote a zombie movie is even infected. They know who they are, and they know who the other people are, and they have their same motivations. Just all of their anger and aggression are turned outward in a manic manner.
Yeah, yeah.
So they lure David up to the room because he's like, "Hey Judy, where are you?" and they hit him in the back of the head from behind and take his gun, and the son is choking him to death. And while he's trying to crawl to the gun, the mother sticks a knife straight through his hand into the wooden floor planks. It's a pretty brutal scene.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead. Yeah, because he ends up he gets his hand stuck with the knife, so he can't move, and so he's slowly trying to lift his hand up. When he does that, he starts talking to the wife, Roy's wife, and he starts like trying to rationalize with her, like, "That's right, because she has the gun pointed at Judy," and he's like, "That's right, I killed your husband." He's trying to like rile her up, and it works.
Yeah,
and she starts to point the gun, and which ensues as one of the best kills of the entire movie, I think.
Yeah, he manages to slowly and painfully slide his hand up with the knife still sticking through it, and then swing that hand and impale the knife into her neck.
Yeah, I thought that was the coolest kill.
But it was another very, very tense scene where the odds didn't look to be in their favor by any means.
Yeah, and it's another character development plot too, because David is a good guy, and genuinely they spend time in the beginning like looking at the remorse that he had, like he didn't want to do what he had to do, like, and he's like being consulted by his wife at that night, and like he's just like he's really messed up, and now later he has to like pretend like he did it on purpose and he was happy to do it. And you could tell that was something he didn't want to do either. Like he doesn't want to do any of this stuff. He's just a genuinely good guy, but he also knows he has to survive. And I just think they wrote his character really well.
Yeah, I agree completely. So he kills her. Now he still has the son to contend with, but Russ hears the gunshots, and he arrives and he shoots the son. And so basically the threat is over. But Russ looks down at the two bodies and just starts pumping extra shots into both of them.
Yeah, double tapping them.
And you can see again that manic anger starting to brew out of Russ in a way he can't control.
Yeah, because David's like, "What are you doing?" And Russ just looks at him, like, "Just making sure."
Yeah. But where David, as you said, really didn't want to. These are citizens that he knew, and he really didn't want to kill or hurt anybody. And you got the feeling Russ was a good guy prior as well.
Yeah.
He doesn't have that good guy anymore. He's becoming worse.
Go ahead.
It just adds so much tension to the dynamic, because they're already this small group of four fighting against all odds. And one more obstacle is a vital member of their four can't be trusted.
Yeah, you're confined to the town, and now you're confined within your group on top of that. So it's getting very claustrophobic. And
so they get in the car and they drive off, but they're quickly tracked by a government helicopter. Even though they're on back roads, there's really no safe place to go.
There's nowhere they can go. It's a small town. The helicopters are swirling around.
So they take the car and they dive into an automated car wash, thinking they can get out of view of the helicopter and at least have some time to think and consider their options.
Yeah.
And in one of my favorite scenes in the movie,
I laughed. I kind of laughed when that first happened, because it reminded me of Casino. They think they're going to pull into the car wash and pull out with a different car, and the helicopter won't know.
Yeah. I don't think it would have mattered, but to me, this scene is so well staged and so creepy. The car wash starts, and the car is now moving through it without their control. They can't drive away. They're stuck on the belt of the car wash, and it's got the big mops that sweep the front window, and you can see somebody's in the car wash, but they can't see who it is or where they're coming from. They keep getting glimpses, and it's really horrific. It's very tense.
Yeah. Well, it's one of my favorite lines, because I think Russell goes to shoot something, and he's like, "What do you do?" Like, and David turns around, he's like, "What are you doing?" He's like, "I saw something move," and he looks at him, he's like, "Everything's moving."
Yeah, right.
He's like, "You need to remain calm." You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. Finally, the people in the car wash make themselves known, and they start crashing at the windows and trying to pull people out, and they do end up shooting them, a couple of them. And as you think they're about to get away, the back window is now broke. Somebody runs a hose in a loop through the back window and snatches Becca up by the neck and just pulls her up. So they stop the car and they get out, but it snapped her neck, and she died instantly from getting yanked like that. And it was kind of a shocking, after all the tension of you can't see who's there, what's going on, to just have her like snatched out like that, I thought was pretty shocking.
Yeah, the cinematography was really good too, because they didn't do like a flash pull away thing. Like they showed the whole thing with like a body double that they used, or a dummy, and I thought it was really well done, because I didn't see it coming. I was like, oh no. And then she gets taken off.
So they're all trying to get her down, and they kill the last crazy. And while they're doing that, their car explodes, was bombed by the helicopter.
Mm-hmm.
So now they're back where they were, on their feet. So the three of them now are walking on. Russ is getting sicker. You can tell. They come upon Russ's crashed cop car, and as they're sitting there, he's going through the car looking for stuff. A black government SUV comes racing down the road, and he throws his spike strip out, and the car hits it going 70 miles an hour. Wheels pop. It flips over like 7 times, and they go confront the government man, who, hey, what the heck's going on here?
Yeah, and David's mad. He's like, why'd you just do that? I said we could use his car. And he's like, oh,
right,
okay.
Could have used his car. You definitely need him alive if you want any answers. But Russ is,
he's losing it,
getting sicker and sicker.
Yep.
The man does live, and he tells David that there was a cargo plane carrying a biological weapon named Trixie, and they were taking it to be destroyed when the plane crashed. And it's kind of like, hey, what do you want us to do? It was an accident.
Yeah, and better was here than somewhere else. Like we lost a plane. We didn't do this on purpose.
Yeah. And before David can ask him any more questions, Russ just pops him right in the middle of the forehead, shoots him dead.
Yeah, and it seemed like he was going to help him.
Yeah, it did, but he didn't help anybody at that point. It turns to the point where Russ even pulls a gun on David, and he makes the couple walk in front of him with a gun pointed at him the whole time. And David and Russ, you can tell, are close. Yeah. And after a while, David he says, I'm not doing this. He turns around and he confronts him, and he's trying to talk him down, and he's kind of reminding him of who they are and what they do, and the things they've been through. And he gets close enough where he punches him and gets the gun away from him. And Russ is down on the ground, and I thought this was really well done. I don't know who the actor who played Russ was, but I thought he was outstanding as well. Yeah, he knows he's sick, and he's sitting on the ground, kind of defeated, and says, "Hey, can I just walk with you guys a little bit longer?" And I thought it was pretty touching. You could tell the closeness of the relationship they had, leading up to this disaster.
Yeah, that getting punched in the face knocked him down, made him kind of snap out of it for a second. And he's like, "What am I doing?" He kind of started getting a little humanity back, and he realizes his time's up. He's like, "Can I just at least walk with you?"
Yeah. So they get to they're walking, and night falls again, and they get to a roadblock. And Russ says, "Hey, I'm going to go distract them so you guys can get around." He's like, "I'm finished anyways. Let me do this for you." And he does. So they sneak around, and as they're sneaking around, they hear Russ being shot down, which is, it's a bit of an emotional moment. Again, he was a really good character up till he got sick.
Yeah, and then sacrificed his life for them to live. So.
Yeah. So it was good. I thought it was a good character arc. Even though he got sick, he did the right thing. Yeah. They make it to the truck stop, and it seems abandoned. And as they're looking around, they find the transfer buses and figure out that they were a fake, and everyone on those transfer buses was killed.
Yeah, they're like burned up, like all burned bodies in there or something.
Yeah, and they start opening everywhere. There's just bodies stuck everywhere. It's just a place packed with dead bodies. At this point, David goes to find a semi truck to use to get them out of there. They're going to go and they're just going to get out of town. And all of the lights in the entire truck stop go off. And an infected chases Judy into like this giant storeroom closet type of area. And it's just filled with bodies. And another tense, creepy scene where she's trying to hide amongst the dead. And, does it see her? Does it not see her? It was, they did a great job in structuring these scenes.
Yeah, and a lot of the faces have that like face of horror when they died look. It was really good.
Yeah, it was sad if you stop and think about what the town went through no fault of their own.
Yeah, they turned it into a concentration camp where they just locked everyone up and murdered them and burnt them and just killed them.
Yeah.
Infected or not, they got everyone.
Yeah, everyone. Couldn't take any chances.
Yeah.
David gets her out, and they get to the semi, and he's trying to find the right key, and he gets pulled underneath. The semi's parked in like a giant oil change area where they're working on the truck underneath, and he gets pulled underneath into that channel, and he's fighting one of the infected, and he manages to dump oil all over it and eventually set it on fire. While he's battling this individual, another one climbs up in the cab of the truck, and Judy shoots it, splattering his head all over the inside of the windshield.
Yeah, which was clutch.
Yeah. I was thinking about that. I'm like, they don't show him clean that off, and there's no way you're seeing to drive with that mess there. But
yeah.
They finally get the right key, they get back in, and they take off. And David had grabbed a walkie-talkie.
That's another thing that I'm always surprised in movies like this is how often people know how to drive trucks with no CDL license training.
Yeah. Now, it does make sense in a farm community from all the tractors and different things, but you're right.
Fair enough.
Everybody in a movie can jump into a tractor.
You can just jump in and drive
take it off.
Yeah. I'm like, wait, this was 2010. They weren't all automatics.
Yeah. No, not at that point. So they hear this countdown on the walkie-talkie that David has grabbed. So they're driving as fast as they can, and a bomb goes off behind them, just wiping out the entire town. And they get pushed forward by the blast, and the truck tumbles and overturns, and they get out and just start walking. They're both okay. They start walking towards Cedar Rapids, which is a much, much larger city. And then the camera pans back out to a military map, almost like a drone shot, tracking the two people walking. And then it highlights the city of Cedar Rapids, and the display says initiate containment protocol, implying the whole mess is going to start all over again on a much larger scale.
Yep. Yeah, and the government's aware of everything that's going on, and then it goes, and then it cuts, and then there's like a couple seconds that go by with some credits, and then we see this fake newscast, and the newscast is saying that there was a chemical plant explosion, and that's what's causing all these forest fires, and don't worry, it was just they're basically, it's a cover up. They're saying it was a chemical plant explosion.
Yep.
Yeah,
it's funny you see that it's such a common theme in movies where something's going wrong, where the government just flat out lies to you.
Yeah. And then I thought about Canada real quick, and I was like, uh-oh, were they containing something?
Yeah, right.
I couldn't help it.
How long is it to walk from Cedar Rapids, Iowa to Canada?
Oh, I don't know. Probably close, right?
But all in all, like I said, I think it's an underrated movie. I think I've seen it many times myself. I saw it in the theaters when it came out, and I just think it's fantastic. Everything about it, the cinematography, the acting, it's just creepy. It's well done. Everything about it is terrific, and I highly recommend it.
Yeah, I love it. And I love Timothy Olyphant. He's made a ton of good movies. He's been on good TV shows, and I think we're going to see a lot more from him in the future too.
Okay, great. Our second film this week under Pathogen Problems is 2016's Train to Busan, directed by Yeon Sang-ho. And I will say up front, as I've said before, disclaimer, if I don't pronounce any of the names right in this film, it is no disrespect to the culture whatsoever. I'm just a dumb white boy doing my best.
Yeah, same.
This movie is almost infamous in its popularity in the last 6 or 7 years, and it deserves every single bit of it. I would,
Yeah.
I kind of asked myself if I was to say what's the best non-Romero zombie movie of all time. I run through a lot of them, and maybe I haven't seen them all, but I think I've seen almost all of them, and I think it might be this.
I have to agree 100%. This is one of my favorite zombie movies, period. It's up there with Romero movies. It's with a lot of them. This one is done really well.
Yeah, it's if you haven't seen it, it is highly recommended. We
Yeah.
start with Siak Wu is kind of our main character. He's a fund manager and a separated single dad who works too much and is completely out of touch with his young daughter Sue Ann.
Yeah. Well, immediately you wonder if he's a bad guy, like a bad father, or yeah, they kind of they're playing into his character a little bit.
Yeah, they give you the impression he's out of touch at least. He's very clueless
At least.
at the very least, which she's young. She needs, and you're in a separated situation, so it does paint him in a negative light to start the film for sure.
Yeah. Well, and then yeah. So we'll go with that for now.
On her birthday, he buys her a gift that she already has.
Right. So he's trying trying really hard, but it's also, he's busy with work, and his work is the reason they have a household and can have dinner together. But he's kind of like lost in between trying to provide for his family. But his daughter's kind of like, I don't need you to do that so much. You just need to spend time with me. And it's kind of,
we all
conundrum.
know that balance is a challenge. He seems to be failing at the balance.
Right. That's a
In
good way
fact,
to put it.
the gift he gets, he has to ask somebody at his office, like what kids are into these days.
Yeah. And what's funny, because right before he does that, he says, hey, we're going to cut all these stock. We got to cut all ties to these stocks. And the guy's like, that works for him, is like, that could destroy the market. He's like, I don't care. You work for me, not the market. And so he has this like really like the tyrannical side to him. And then he goes, oh, by the way, what's a good thing to get a kid for birthday?
Yeah.
So you're kind of seeing this duality that they've created with the character right away.
Yeah. And it's not like, in some of these situations, it's split custody and maybe he doesn't get the time with her he wants. She lives with him.
Yeah.
And he doesn't know what she has or what she wants. Like it really speaks to his lack of investment in the relationship with his daughter. And that's kind of one of the underlying arcs of this movie. Mm-hmm. And what I think separates it from a lot of good zombie movies is the character depth and the
yes.
And the acting and the compassion that this movie brings forth. This is an emotional movie.
Very emotional. You get drawn into these characters.
She gets upset. You're buying me something I already have. She points to it sitting on her desk, like it's right there.
Yeah. Which, first of all, having 2 Nintendo Wiis would rule.
All she wants is to go to Busan and visit her mother. That's all she wants for her birthday. And he finally gives in and agrees. Okay, I'll take you. So they head off to the train, and you see on their way there, it's early morning. It's still dark. You see a bunch of emergency vehicles running around. You see a building on fire, and you can see, okay, things are already starting to come unravel.
Yeah. But they're kind of unaware of it. They're not really paying attention.
It must have been a fire. Completely oblivious. As everybody gets on the train and it's getting ready to leave, a sick woman kind of stumbles on right before the door closed, and she manages to, nobody sees her, none of the attendants notice her. She's just staggering around, looking extremely sick, and then she finally falls to the floor, starts flailing and convulsing. And one of the things this movie does so well is when the sound design of when the people turn from regular people to the infected is there's like this snapping of bones and this very rapid, overwhelming body transformation that you don't see. It's not like American Werewolf in London where you see the body elongate or the bones snap, but it's herky jerky and you just hear all this cracking and snapping. Yeah. And then they stand up and their eyes are white and the veins are running through their skin and they're infected.
that sound of celery sticks snapping kind of thing, and like you see like their elbow will be contorted over their head and turning around, and they're doing all this like contorted stuff, like you said.
Yeah, and she quickly attacks one of the attendants. And one thing we find out very quickly is this virus passes very quickly, and the attacked quickly become the infected, and they start attacking others.
It's very Zack Snyderish with the zombies, like what he did with Dawn of the Dead.
Yeah. I do think this is better, but
the speed of the zombies,
the speed of they are extremely fast and hyper aggressive, and particularly in volume, even one, but in volume, they create an overwhelming swarm. And I almost feel like it's been duplicated since, where people kind of took their take on zombies and
the swarm mentality of it. Yep.
Yeah. Our main group of people, including Siak Wu and his daughter Suan, they make it to a train car and get it shut off, where nobody can get in, none of the infected can get in. And here we have on the government, there's the news is on in the car, and the government claims that they have the infection contained, that no one is in jeopardy, and we already know different. We saw different. The train engineer is told they're going to stop at Dijon, which is a stop that the military has secured.
Right.
And okay, they're going to be safe. Everybody's going to get off there. Sue-Ann has befriended a young couple, Sang-Hwa, who might be the best character in the whole movie, and his pregnant wife, Seong-Kyung.
Yeah, that's played by Don Lee, and he's done a bunch of good movies that we can discuss later on. But he's done a lot of good movies.
He's the absolute best in this.
Yeah,
he immediately doesn't like Sion's dad, because he already detects in him the inattentiveness and the lack of compassion. He's got a pregnant wife. He already has more compassion for his unborn child than it seems like this man has for his living daughter.
Yeah.
He almost has like an immediate disdain for her.
Yeah.
For him,
he's a character in this movie. He's got that certain amount of a charm. He's funny. Yeah.
So the train stops, and there is nobody around. They get out, and the whole place is abandoned. So the group is making their way through slowly. As they come into the train station, start to come down a set of steps, there's a line of military with their back all to them, and they quickly all turn around, and you can see they're all infected. And the train station becomes a swarm of military infected trying to overwhelm our train of survivors, and they're trying to run back to the train. But it's a quick scene of massive chaos.
Yeah, but they're able to lock them in one of the cars, and they find out that they're not smart enough to know how to open the latch. Like, you can just leave it latched, and they won't know how to do anything.
Yeah.
And then there's real smart. So one lady is real smart. She takes water and puts water up on the window, and she starts putting newspapers so it'll stick.
Yeah.
And so you can tell that there's some kind of sensory issue with them, because they stop trying to growl and attack the window. They're just like, oh, there's nothing there.
If they can't immediately see it, it's not a thing to them. They don't use smell. They gotta see it.
Mm-hmm.
Before they get out of the train station, Suan is almost attacked, and Sang-Hwa saves her, and he sends her with his wife to the train, and then a group of them, including him and Siak Wu, get the gate shut to prevent them from coming any farther, and then they take off for the train. And there's a cool scene with the train stopped, and the building kind of looms over the train, and there's a huge glass window, and you can see like the swarm of the infected just piling against the window until it breaks, and they fall like rain and just scatter. They land on the train, next to the train.
Yeah.
And they just
like a swarm everywhere. Of ants, like an endless swarm of ants. Like, this isn't going to stop.
Yeah, and they fell so unnatural and like just made their cracking noise and got up and started running again. It was really, really cool scene.
Yeah.
The train takes off, and the few stragglers haven't made it on yet. We end up with a group of Siak Wu, Sanhua, and the baseball player Young Gook. The three of them,
the younger kid, because there's a young team of baseball players. What they might be like high school kids, and so like they're on the train maybe to go travel to play a game. So so you've got the young baseball player, you've got like the middle-aged father, and then the soon-to-be father. So you've got kind of this three generations.
Yeah, and that group of three makes it on. They're in a train car by themselves, but they're separated from their people. The baseball player has a girlfriend. She's in the front main car, and Sanghua and Siak Wu, his wife and the daughter, are trapped in a restroom in a car, several in front of them.
Yeah, so they have to traverse through certain cars to get to where they want to be. So that kind of becomes their journeys, like through this whole train. They have to fight through these zombies.
Yeah, and they wrap their arms and tape their arms, and the Young Gook has a baseball bat, so it's the three of them going to try to fight their way to their families, and it's action packed. It's there's a lot of punching and swinging of the bats,
neck snapping and stuff. It's real cool.
Yeah, and they finally halfway through they go through a tunnel, and they realize that the infected stop in the dark. Back to that sensory issue where. They realize they can use the dark to move and do it without having to fight as much,
which I thought was very clever. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Back in the main cart where all the other people are, including the girlfriend of the baseball player, Yan Suk is a businessman, and he has been a jerk the entire movie. He wanted the train to leave without people. Like, he only cares about himself and nothing else. And he tells him that, hey, we can't let these people in. They might be infected. We got to worry about us.
Yeah, he's just a selfish, fat cat.
Yeah. Just he is the royal bastard of the movie for sure.
Yep.
Our group of three, they make it to the restroom where they reunite with Seong Kyung and Suan and a few others. They rescue them all, and they start heading towards the main car to get in with the others. And in fact, they use the luggage areas during a tunnel. They climb across the luggage areas to get past the group of infected without having to fight them. Because now they have an older woman, they have the child, they have the pregnant woman, and they make it to the car. But because of Yan Suk, they won't let them in. And there's this big fight at the car door, and the baseball player's got his arm in there, and they're trying to fight it open, and they're trying to close it. And they eventually make it in, but in doing so, they lose Sanghua. He gets bit back trying to hold, because they have nowhere to go. They're trying to hold off the infected, and he's just got them blocked, and is telling, all right, get out of here. I got you.
And it's more that emotional development in this movie. Like, you get invested in these characters. You like the guy, and he's real cool, and he's kind of leading the pack, and he's like, he's gonna die. He's like, just gonna sacrifice himself for everyone. Yeah. And his wife and everything. He's like, just do it, just go. And like, there's just you just get invested in all these characters throughout the whole movie.
Yeah, they do an outstanding job. And he's grown to, through their battles now, he's grown to appreciate Siak Wu a little bit more.
Yeah, he was snarky towards him at first, but he like kind of got to know him, and the daughter. He likes the daughter, and like he's like, all right, like we're in this together.
He sends him with his wife, and he says, take care of her.
Yeah.
So they finally
have this funny. Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, I was just gonna say they finally do make it into the main cart, but the last woman doesn't make it. It's an older woman, and her sister was with the main group, and they kind of caught eyes through the glass, and the sister was like so happy to have her sister back, and then just before she makes it, she gets overrun.
Yeah, just like, again, more that they were just taking these characters down that you invested in.
Yeah, and they do such a good job of it. Mm-hmm. At this point, Young Suk tells the whole group, hey, you guys got to leave. Like, you made it in here, but you can't stay. We don't trust you. You might be infected. And they make them go into a separate vestibule and lock themselves in. Well, the sister who watched her sister get bitten is so upset by the lack of humanity and what's become of the people, and so upset with what happened to her sister. While everybody's fighting and arguing, she walks down to the other end and just opens the door. And so the people who were forced to go to the vestibule are now the only safe people, because that cart just got overrun by the infected.
Yeah, she's like, I've had enough of it.
Of course, our bastard and the one attendant from the train who he convinces to be on his side, those two jerks hide in the bathroom and are the only people who live.
Yeah.
So, lesson in movies: jerks always live.
Yeah. He pushes everyone. He pushes everyone out of his way, literally, just to try and be safe. He cares about no one.
Yeah, he is rotten awful. At least the infected have this pathogen and virus running through their blood and have no control.
But they're not even killing it. They're not even killing each other. Like, he's killing his own.
Yeah, he's just a purposeful bastard.
Right.
They get to the East Daegu station and the tracks are blocked, so they are forced to stop. And the engineer gets out to go look for another working train that he can use. And Yan Suk escapes by pushing his friend, the guy who supported him, into the group of zombies and runs away while they're attacking him.
Yeah.
He makes it over to another car where he does the exact same thing to the baseball player's girlfriend, where he pushes her into a group of infected to save himself.
He's pushing teenage girls into zombies. Like, he's just a bad person.
And Young Gook is heartbroken, and he sits with her and he holds her until she turns, and then she attacks him.
Yep.
He just kind of like gave up and said, I'll just be here with you, and we'll
the end.
Infected.
We'll be infected together.
At this point, a flaming engine just comes flying into the train station and crashes into a bunch of trains, and the trains kind of topple and lean into each other, and Seok Woo gets knocked out, and his group is trapped between two leaning trains now. And he finally comes to, and Suan is crying, and it's like, how are we going to get out of here? He manages to dig underneath one of them, and the three of them get away. So we just have him, the daughter, and the pregnant wife of Sang Hyo. And they run away, and as they do, the trains collapse, and it opens up for all the infected that were inside. And we just see a swarm of infected start to pour over the top of the train and chase them.
Yeah, I thought the scene was really cool. Like they get up on the train, and you can see them trying to like they're trying to hold the train off. They're trying to get on there, and they're just trying to. The father's just trying to kick them off and get them off the train, and it's really intense. Like, towards the end, it's like these things are relentless.
Yeah, well, the conductor had got an engine running, and he got it moving, and he was heading out. And he jumps off to save Yeon Suk, who in turn sacrifices the conductor to save himself again. So he gets on the engine.
Yeah.
So our group of three, they make it to the engine with the horde in pursuit, and they climb on. But in a really cool scene, like you talked about, the infected start grabbing the back of this moving train, and they create this growing pile of human ladder that they just keep all climbing up.
That's exactly what it was. Yeah,
it was insane. I don't know how they shot it, honestly, but
I don't either. Yeah.
Eventually, he's kicking their hands free, and he gets them. They all fall off.
Yeah.
Once they open the door to the engine, the Young Suk, somewhere in his sacrificing everybody else, he must have got bit, because he has turned. And now him and Seok Woo fight along the side of the train, and Seok Woo gets bit on the hand, and he finally throws him off.
Well, it's interesting. Right before he does, he has this like moment, like right before the fight, I think, where they have this moment where now for the first time, now that he's infected, that corporate guy is suddenly like coming to tears and like wants to be with his family kind of thing. It was interesting to see his character like kind of like come full swing, like or take a whole new turn.
Yeah, it was at this point the movie's very emotional.
I thought that was really well done. They could have just made him like like and like been a full blown infected, but like no, let's give him a character arc too. Even in the 2 lines that they gave him, that was just enough to make you seem like, wow, even he had humanity and was panicking, and at the end of the day, he was probably a normal person before all this.
Yeah, true. When we realized Siak Wu was doomed, Sue-Ann is crying hysterically. It gets super emotional.
Yeah. She should have gotten an award for that scene when she was crying. I thought that was like serious.
It was so good. He shows the two ladies now how to stop the train, and he basically says goodbye and shuts the engine door. And he goes to the back of the train. Now the train's moving, it's scooting along pretty good. He goes to the back of the train and he has flashbacks, and he sees her birth, and he sees him holding her for the first time, and he starts to have all these wonderful memories of his daughter. And we kind of complete the character arc where he realizes that, he was mistaken and she was the most important thing to her. And through this journey, he came to this realization, and he grew so much as a person. Early on, we saw him try to shut the door on somebody to protect himself, similar to Jan Suk. But then we saw him grow into somebody who would do anything to protect and save others.
Yeah.
It was a really great character arc for him. And finally, as we see him turn infected, and all these memories just fading out of his head, we see him just fall off the back of the train where, he makes sure he doesn't hurt anybody with his infection.
Yeah, without a doubt, the most emotional zombie movie I've ever seen.
Yeah, absolutely. The people, the people I watched this with loved it and were in tears for the last 10 minutes of the movie.
Yep.
They come to some debris in the tracks, and it makes them stop. And so we get the pregnant woman, the little girl, and they walk off, and they're walking through this destruction and all this chaos for whatever happened there. And they're walking into a dark tunnel, and I'm thinking, for all that this woman and this little girl have been through, the stones on them to just keep going forward and walk into this dark tunnel is just unbelievable.
Yeah. It just speaks to the power of the character that they had.
We see the scene from the other side of the tunnel, and the military is there, and we have a sniper with the gun trained on them, and the boss asks them, what's their infection status, and they say unable to confirm. So they get the order to shoot, and just before he pulls the trigger, they hear
he's hesitant. He's hesitant. Well, he's hesitant too. Like he gives him a minute because he's like what? Like he doesn't want to do this.
He doesn't. But with all they've seen that day, you can imagine. All right. What's got to be done. Yeah. But they hear Sue-Ann singing, and it's kind of another cool, complete 360 full circle here, where she's singing the song that she was supposed to perform at school, and her father didn't show up, and she sang it for him, so she never finished the song and ended up crying instead. And it was one of the things that guilted him into taking the trip in the first place. And she's singing the same song, and it actually saves the
and she's crying. Yeah, she's crying and kind of hugging the pregnant woman. And,
Siak Wu.
Siak Wu, yes.
No, I'm sorry, that's the dad.
I'm sorry.
I'm terrible with these names. Seong Hyun.
Yeah.
Sorry. But she's crying and she's singing it, and it's just such a complete 360 moment. But the military realizes they're human, and then he says, they're not infected, and a whole group rushes in and brings them both to safety.
Yeah.
And it's like, man, what an emotional roller coaster of a movie.
Yeah, you don't see it coming. It's intense.
I think it's several things at once. The infected, or the zombies, however you want to refer to them, are fantastic. The way they move, the sound associated with their movements and with their changing in particular, the emotional depth that it achieves for multiple characters. It's not like they get you to care about one or two people.
It's multiple ones, and they get you to hate
in,
ones too. Yeah.
It's so well done. It is, and the action is
satisfying,
nonstop. Somehow they managed to build all this character development without ever taking the foot off the pedal,
or seeming corny. Like this movie isn't corny at all. When we say like emotional development or anything like that, this movie's not corny. Like everything done in this movie is very well done, and the pacing through it is perfect. Like it's a 2-hour movie. It doesn't feel that way at all.
Agree. Yeah, outstanding movie, and I do again. We've talked about this before. How much I love Romero and love his movies and love his zombie lore. This is a contender for the best zombie movie ever made, in my opinion.
I agree. It has to be up. It has to be in the conversation at least.
If you take Romero out of it, I think there's no question. There's
no question.
Top two. People might argue a couple other things, but it's so good.
Yeah,
it's such a beautifully done movie. I did hear. I looked this up because we have this tendency to want to make an American version of anything that's wonderfully done in another country, and we screw it up.
Yeah.
There was reported an American version of this movie called The Last Train to New York. I saw that it was in production. I saw it had a release date scheduled, but then this was like the last update was like 2 years ago and nothing since. So hopefully somebody got their head out of their ass and squashed
Just support these awesome Korean films because there's a lot of them,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Just love it for what it is. You're not going to do it better. Just leave it be.
You're right. It was a piece of art that was made. Enjoy it.
Yeah. So I thought, what a fantastic subject because of the timeliness of it and the fact that it's something that's real in our world that, and these are, of course, fictionalized accounts. But you got two outstanding movies.
Yeah. Something we can't see is being manipulated to destroy us by something we can't understand.
Yeah. What's scarier than that?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Excellent. So that's our topic. That's our show for this week. We hope you enjoyed it. Our pleasure to be with you as always. We'll be back next week where we're going to talk about medical mayhem. And that's another category that's going to bring some interesting things to the forefront. So
yeah, hopefully no one gets stabbed in the eyes. We'll see.
Yeah, they probably will. We'll be here for you, Matt. That's our show. We appreciate you as always. This is the Weekly Horoscope. I'm Jerry. That's Matt. We'll see you next time.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Thank you, Jerry.
Your Weekly Horoscope with Jerry and Matt.